If you read old books, you hear Christians talk about dying well or preparing to die. There was a sense that death wasn't just something that we should push out of our view as long as possible, but in a real sense, it was the last battle, even the greatest battle that each believer would need to face. And so there was a sense of needing to prepare oneself for death. Now, if there's anything that's been apparent over the last few years, it's that the modern world doesn't know how to die, that even Christians were clinging to life in a way that doesn't testify to our faith, but rather is evidence that we're more secular in our thinking than maybe we're willing to admit. Now, this hymn workout, it is a workout that can help you prepare for death, not in the sense of any morbid, just constantly thinking about death, but rather reaching a place where you're willing to give your life to Jesus and trust him with it, whether he gives you a lot more time or a little bit of time. Maybe you've read in Philippians about Paul when he says, to live is Christ, to die is gain. Let me ask you the question, is that your attitude? Do you really feel like, okay, well, if I live, well, that's an opportunity to serve Christ. But if I die, that's a gain. If you're not there, you need this hymn. And so let's work through it. And let me teach you how to take a hymn and how to use it for meditation and how to use it to bring your heart closer to communion with God. Now, this is an old hymn by someone called Richard Baxter. It starts out, Lord, it belongs not to my care whether I die or live. To love and serve thee is my share. In this thy grace must give. Now listen to those first two lines. This is a gut check. It belongs not to my care whether I die or live. He's saying, I'm not that concerned about this. This isn't for me to worry about because it's not in my hands how long I live. This is in your hands. And to love and serve thee is my share. This is what's so amazing about being a Christian, that what we'll be doing in this life or the next life, it's not different. Our calling is to love and serve God, whether it's in the current life with all of its suffering and its sorrow and its sin. But when we get to the next life, it's the same calling to love and serve him there, just as the angels do. The second stanza. If life be long, I will be glad that I may long obey. If short, yet why should I be sad to soar to endless day? Now look at the perspective of life here. I mean, this just is a collision with everything true of modern identity. That the mindset of the hymn writer is that if life is long, well, then that's an opportunity to long obey you. This life is not about me. It's not my bucket list. It's not what I want to get done before I die. This life is all about obedience to Christ. Which means if it's shortened, well, why be sad? Because as the hymn writer says, to soar to endless day, we're going to something better. This is what Paul understood, and it's why you could say it's better to be absent from the body, present with the Lord. Now, this third stanza, if this was the only stanza, if it was a one-stanza hymn, it would be worth having within the church as an object of meditation, because this hymn is just so rich. Let me read it to you. Christ leads me through no darker rooms than he went through before. No one into his kingdom comes, but through his opened door. Christ doesn't take us anywhere. He leads us into no darker room than he went through before. Whatever we think we're experiencing in this life, and sometimes we do have to go through some pretty terrifying circumstances, the one thing the Christian can never say is, Jesus, you don't understand. You've not been where I've been. No, Jesus can look at us, and with his kind eyes, we can see, no, he tasted the cup of God's wrath. We'll never face the wrath of God. We'll never be forsaken like he was forsaken. He went into a darker room. So whatever he's summoning us into, he's been through worse. And he can take us through that room, into his presence. This image that no one comes into his kingdom but through his opened door. That every instance it's through him, but there's this picture of he's leading us. He's opening us the doors for us that lead us into his presence. Come, Lord, when grace has made me meet thy blessed face to see. And if thy work on earth be sweet, what will thy glory be? This is a different perspective on death. Come when your grace has made me meet, has made me worthy, thy blessed face to see. That's what this life is about. It's not about enjoying our kids and grandkids as long as possible. It's not about going and traveling the world. It's not about achieving success and a legacy that other people are going to admire. The whole point of this life is to prepare to see the face of Jesus. And when Jesus thinks that we're ready, when he thinks that we're ready to see his place, well, then your grace come. That's the moment to then pass into his presence. And there's this honest statement, for if thy work on earth be sweet. This is the marvel of being a Christian, that much of what we go through is difficult, but still, as believers, we know there's something sweet in the midst even of the pain and sorrow. If that's true in this life, which is a valley of tears often, what's the glory going to be like when there's this sweetness without the pain? Why wouldn't we want to go and experience that? Then I shall end my sad complaints and weary sinful days, and join with all triumphant saints who sing my Jehovah's praise. My knowledge of that life is small. The eye of faith is dim, but 'tis enough that Christ knows all, and I shall be with him. I love that last stanza. My knowledge of that life is small. There's real honesty with the hymn writer. We don't know that much about eternity. The Bible gives us little snapshots, but it's not detailed accounts. The hymn writer says the eye of faith is dim. We're looking at something. This is part of why we do struggle. We can see this world. We know its pleasures. We can taste them. We know what, in a sense, we feel like we're giving up. It's harder to know what we're gaining. But listen to how the hymn ends. 'Tis enough that Christ knows all, and I shall be with him. That's what we know. He's resurrected. He's not subject to the fallen conditions of this world. He's a faithful Lord. He's a faithful Savior. He's going to bring us into his presence. And just to know that joy that he's currently experiencing, that's what awaits us, we can leave all that we don't know in his hands. And we can trust him that whether, again, life is short or life is long, this life is all about serving him. And we don't have to be afraid of dying, because for the Christian, as another hymn writer talks about, or several hymn writers, for the Christian, death, it's like the rending of the veil. And what we do when these eyes close, when this heart stops, all of a sudden what we enter into is the glorious presence of our resurrected King. And that's something to be excited about.